Welcome back. You alluded to another war that we're fighting just before we went on that break.
Yes, the war against poverty.
Poverty, hunger.
I remember there's this Yoruba saying that, and a musician sang it in a song, that if you take hunger away from poverty, poverty is significantly dealt with. Before 1979, because it was 1979 that the Second Republic started, the Obasanjo government at the time started a program they called Operation Feed the Nation. It was an attempt to move us back to agriculture, which we had lost as a result of the Civil War, a trend we'd lost as a result of the Civil War, because then, during the First Republic, there was this very vibrant regional competition, so to speak. The North had the groundnut pyramid, the West had its cocoa, the East had its coal, and a number of other things like that. But here we are now, so many years after, we're still talking about the same thing, where a situation where Nigeria is ranked as a top global food crisis hotspot with an estimated 31.8 million to 34.7 million people projected to face acute food insecurity this year. We have one of the highest numbers of food insecure individuals globally, driven by conflicts in the north, climate change, and high food price inflation, while the opportunities to to marshal our food is still there. Well, let's have conversations around this with Aziz Salau, who is Executive Director, Community Action for Food Security. Thanks for joining us this morning, sir.
Yes, thank you very much for having me. Good morning, everyone.
Should we be in this situation, Mr. Salau, given where we are coming from as a nation, given all of the opportunities we have? There is hardly any part of the country that doesn't have arable land. How did we get here?
Well, thank you very much. It's actually very sad because Nigeria food crisis is really not due to lack of resources, just like you've mentioned, vast arable land, a large agricultural workforce. But then it's really a fundamental system failure. The country has between 70 to 80 million hectares of arable land, yet, half of this arable land efficiently, or they are less efficiently utilized, and productivity remains below global average. So like I said, it's really a systemic failure. Beyond production, we lose up to 40 to 50% of what we grow, due to poor storage, weak logistics, inadequate rural infrastructure, and to also digress a bit or move forward. At this same time, insecurity is insecurity is really key, especially when it comes to areas where food are actually being produced, and this has really forced many farmers off their land, reducing output significantly. So what we are seeing now is the breakdown across the entire value chain, from production to processing down to distribution. Food is being produced. Yes, food is being produced because most of the food that we consume, especially in the urban community, are being produced by the rural community. But then it is not going to where it's needed efficiently and also affordably. So that is why it is not just an agricultural issue. It is a governance, it's an infrastructure issue, it's an economic coordination challenge. And the earlier we start looking at the root cause of all of this, the better for us. And if we fix these systemic gaps, Nigeria has more than enough capacity to feed itself and also become a net exporter for food. But then that systemic failure needs to be properly addressed, because we are used to when some of these reports comes out and it goes viral, we tend to look for the quick wins and all of that, but we are not solving the root cause, which is a systemic issue. So until we are deliberate, we are intentional about solving the root cause, until that we'll still continue having some of these issues and need to continue to
right. And as an organization that is passionate about this, what are the suggestions that you have. You've listed a couple of things. Infrastructure gaps, insecurity, and what have you. We talked a lot about insecurity just before you came on. So what are those things that you think can be done in the interim? Or what are those things that your organization is championing, let me put it that way, to ensure that, we take care of some of these issues?
Well, to really address this issue of food crisis, especially in Nigeria as it affects us, we must move from short-term, responses. We must move from short-term emergency, responses to long-term resilient building. And what it means is that we need to put smallholders at the center of everything we're actually doing, especially in terms of investing in them, the people that produce the majority of our food, while also strengthening climate resilience through irrigation, improved seedling and early warning. It may interest you to know that a lot of some of these things are happening, especially at areas where we tag as food baskets of the nation. The security challenges, most of them, we need to go to the root cause of them, and we need to have a very diverse dialogue with all of these, localities. We need to know the people that are, maybe fronting or even sponsoring some of these things, because if we are not really going to do that, it's still going to come, because you can imagine a farming community that has been displaced for over 10 years. Now we are also looking at how we can actually fix some of those things, but then we need to be intentional about some of these things, and all of these things has to happen, or it needs to start from the sub-national. The governor being intentional about particularly the budget of the agricultural ministry in their states. Now, FAC allocation is huge for all the states. They need to be intentional about how they pump, resources to infrastructure. They pump, the resources to make sure that enabling environment is really there for all of these things to happen. Infrastructural gap is also a very, major thing, and we must fix our rural infrastructure, reduce post-harvest loss, and improve market access. A lot of these farmers, they have their locality where they produce some of these food items, but then the major challenge they are having is even how they are able to move some of those goods from their market, from their farm to the market. So at the same time, policy must go beyond announcements to actual implementation. And when it comes to implementation, like I said, it has to happen at the sub-national level.
Right.
What is happening in Ogun State is quite different, from what is happening in Kano State, because even when we talk about the agroecological zone, they're actually different. So we can't say that, someone is doing this in maybe Lagos State or something, or in Ogun State we want to replicate. No, we need to understand the root cause of what is really causing some of the challenges at different levels, at different local governments and states, and see how we can actually make sure that we have a very strong accountability mechanism.
Yes, I beg your pardon, Mr. Solao. Yes, I beg your pardon. Yes, and I agree with you. Sorry, I'm coming in here, and I agree perfectly with everything that you're saying. But beyond that, it's these things that you've spoken about are for people who are, existing farmers or people who are already practicing, agriculture, but that have challenges, with what they're doing because of all these things that you've spoken about. But then there are people who moved away from agriculture because it seemed as if it was no longer as lucrative. Yes, we say food is a must. People eat every day. So food is supposed to be, food business is good business. That's what they always say. But it's as if farming is not as attractive as it used to be. There are various slogans that I've heard over the years: make farming great again, make farming beautiful again, for people to go back to the farms and see that this is a good thing. So beyond the infrastructure, provision of infrastructure, a lot of people just don't see farming as something that pays off at the end of the day. Did you get that?
Well, so yes, you're actually correct. But then post-COVID, the UN Secretary General called for a food systems dialogue. And the good thing is that Nigeria keyed into it. So now we are now, engaging beyond production, beyond farming. And it is really important for, people to start seeing it from the lenses of the food systems, which is what happens from production down to consumption. And the good thing is that a lot of people can actually, key into different value chains, different value addition to really make ends meet. And just like you rightly said, now what we are trying to, advocate, especially for young people, is to make them understand that you really don't even have to be on the field to call yourself a farmer. You can do a lot of things around, processing. You can do a lot of things around marketing. You can do a lot, even consultancy. It's really what is really going to help us, move away from that restriction that has been pegged that agriculture is strenuous, is tedious, and all of that. There are a lot of value chain that are now, very popular, and a lot of people are already embracing it. But there is need for us to make sure that we are really, structuring, especially in terms of making sure that there are different policy that are guiding a lot of this engagement, so that it would not get to a point whereby people would just, start doing things, shabbily and all of that. So, but then it really boils down to making sure that we have a very strong coordination system, especially at the subnational level. I'm really emphasizing on subnational level because a lot of the things that we need to move from one point to the other for us to transform our food systems is really going to happen. The transformation we talk about is really going to happen at the subnational level. And the commissioners of agri, the commissioners, working around food systems, when it comes to food systems, we are really talking about maybe 14 to 15 MDAs, because they cut across, transportation, water resources, land management, logistics, and all of that. So science and technology. So we need to make sure that we are intentional about moving or doing a lot of advocacy and awareness for people to start understanding that these are inroads. These are low-hanging fruits we really need to embrace, and we really need to start working together, because whether we like it or not, it is really going to help us, improve a whole lot of things we really want to improve, especially, improving our GDP. The NESG, macroeconomic outlook for this for 2026 was very explicit and was very, clear about investing in agriculture, agri-food systems, and also, manufacturing sector. We are stabilized this year, but then how do we maintain, how do we consolidate, how do we make sure that people at the rural community are understanding some of these things, at that local level, at that locality, making sure that we are working together, we're seeing ourselves as brothers, and making sure that we are really helping ourselves to move from agriculture to agri-food systems, and people understanding the different areas they can actually come in, working together, bring their brothers keeper, and making sure that everybody's really working together. And without this, a lot of things would remain stagnant. We'll keep looking for immediate solutions instead of tackling the systemic problem we need to tackle to make sure that we are really looking at revolutionizing the agri-food system sector in Nigeria.
Okay.
Thank you.
But you talked about the subnationals, and I'm an advocate of a functional subnational system. As I said, there is hardly any state in the country that doesn't have vast arable land. In fact, you would remember that in the First Republic and into the Second, we had a cocoa from the southwest, the north had its groundnut pyramids, the east, then just 3 regions had their coal and all of that. But now we have 36 states. Do you see a capacity challenge? That's one. And how do we bridge that gap? Secondly, we know about, and I think you have also talked about it, post-harvest losses. Data says about 40% of harvest that is lost due to one reason or the other. So where do we go from here?
Yes, thank you very much. Like, I think you were able to answer the question. Yes, the first thing is capacity gap. And this is really not, about, maybe the governor, nominating or appointing a commissioner. The capacity gap has now, dwindled down into some of the even lower level officers, at the Ministry of Agriculture, at the ministry that started with responsibilities around food systems. And I think the only way we can actually, correct that is to make sure that the governors are being intentional about who they make the commissioner of agriculture or commissioner of ministries around the agri-food systems, because this is really going to change a whole lot of things. There is really a very sad reality, especially with civil servants at the subnational level. And it's not really because they are actually not interested, but then the leadership, there is need to be intentionality about the leadership of, especially of the commissioners at subnational level, because we need to go far beyond, using some of these key institutions, using some of these key MDAs to reward loyalty and all of that.
Perhaps another challenge that we have had, Mr. Saleh, my sincere apologies, and we're running out of time. Perhaps you want to speak to this maybe in about 30 to 45 seconds. Perhaps it's the challenge. We also have a challenge in the coinage we give to that ministry, commissioner for agriculture, simply because, for instance, in Oyo State, they have an agribusiness agency. Do you think it'll make any difference if we changed it from agriculture, commissioner for agriculture, to commissioner for agribusiness or something like that? Maybe it'll give them a little more sense of seriousness about the whole thing.
No, it will not really work. What we need to do is a very serious reorientation, mindset change.
Okay.
Especially at that level, so that people would not, because a lot of some of these things, the major challenge is greed. There's nothing they are really thinking to do for the masses if they are not going to benefit directly or indirectly from it, and we would not grow from with that. So we need to be intentional about how the different departments are functioning. Okay. We have a very strong monitoring and evaluation framework to make sure that we are marking KPIs, we are understanding how some of these things work, and the people at the ends of affairs at the different departments at the subnational level are intentional. We need to also maybe bring in some measures to say that if you are not active, we are maybe demoting, or we are punishing, or some of those things. With that, a lot of some of these people will sit up and do the right thing they are supposed to do.
Okay.
Because we don't really have any excuse again. Because before we used to say that, oh, okay, the FAC allocation is low, there's this, there's that. Now we are talking about being intentional about, we have the money now, let us invest in, even if it is as simple as infrastructure. Right. We have a lot of technologies now. We just finished the post-harvest Connect conference led by the Nigerian Stock Research Institute, where they are showcasing technologies that can help us reduce post-harvest loss. So it is there's no excuse for any state to lag behind, especially in terms of taking care of their people.
Absolutely. Right, absolutely. Thank you again, and we do hope, Ayo, that we will not longer be, in the top uppermost part of this hunger spot.
We need to get out of that list.
Yeah, we have to get out of that list. Thank you again, Aziz Salau, Executive Director, Community Action for Food Security. Thank you for your time. And when we return,
what's going to happen?
We're going to be on the other side.